Salute. How y'all doing? My name is DerrickCWilliams. In 1988, Prince Philip famously said, and I'll paraphrase, in the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return to the earth as a deadly virus in order to do something about population. CNN founder Ted Turner said that a 95% reduction in human population would be ideal. At present, we have about 9 billion people on the earth, and a 95% reduction in the population would put us a little bit over 1 billion people on the earth. In Georgia, you have the famous American Stonehenge, also known as the Georgia Guidestones, and in granite, in stone, it is etched the words, a 500 million population would be right in line with Mother Earth. Mother Earth can sustain only 500 million people. The title of this presentation will be called The Virus. And I'm just one man in the comment section on YouTube. As we all know, the coronavirus is spreading throughout the planet. It is a pandemic as far as I'm concerned. And the global stock market has plunged. Supply lines will be interrupted in our country, and life as we know it, at least for the near future, will be radically changed. All the love and hip hop, all the nonsense, idiots in cars lying on YouTube and things like that, all of that will be nothing once this thing goes red in our country. And to my knowledge, I don't hear too many people that I know talk about this thing from a serious standpoint. No one is getting prepared. No one is even talking about the word preparation. But I just want to do my little part by putting this little video together that I saw about the mindset of the people that will do such a ghastly act. I'm of the opinion that this bioweapon, and it is a bioweapon, was released on purpose for the express purpose of not only population control, but also a clampdown on civil liberties. But I will let someone that's much more versed than I speak. All y'all take care. Greenville, Mississippi, till I die.
This is going to be a fascinating, we're going to get into the heads of the globalists here to try to understand what they are thinking when they released this global pandemic and engineered this weapon against human beings, the Wuhan coronavirus, so-called COVID-19. Now, in the last week, I've become convinced that this release was deliberate. Originally, I thought it was an accident. That was the most likely explanation. There was a virology lab in Wuhan, and the Chinese were playing around with this biological weapon. They were engineering it, adding in what's called gain-of-function properties. We have a history of the accidental release of SARS viral 4 times over the last, 15 years or so. So it seemed reasonable that this might have been an accident. But now I'm convinced that it was a deliberate release made to look like an accident. So let's start with some basics here. We know that, of course, there are many, we'll call them globalists. They're just, wealthy, elite people who run the world. They influence all the decision makers. Many of them are more powerful than governments. People like Bill Gates, who's a strong influencer. Some are billionaires and some are not. Some are just scientists, but they have a lot of influence. And what they are seeing is the total destruction of the biosphere, that Earth is being destroyed by humankind. Now, they're not wrong in that observation. They see, as probably you and I see, the total collapse of pollinators across the world. Did you realize there's a 70 or 80% collapse of insect biomass in Europe, according to studies? Did you know that if we lose the insects, everything else dies eventually? We lose the pollination, we lose the food supply, we lose human civilization. Did you know the globalists see that too? They see the mass plastics pollution, so-called microplastics in the oceans. They see the mass die-offs, the dead zones. Everywhere that a river from a human-populated continent empties into the ocean, there's a massive dead zone there. The agricultural chemicals, the runoff, the pollution, the heavy metals, the biohazards, all that. The globalists also see the loss of habitat. So much habitat has been destroyed, habitat that supports the biosphere, the ecosystem that sustains us all. And if you lose habitat, then the animals can't survive, and the insects can't survive, and the birds can't survive, and the pollinators can't survive, and everything. Destruction is very serious right now when you have the clear cutting of rainforests to grow genetically modified soybean products in Brazil, for example. But think about all the clear cutting in the state of Texas, where I live. You look around Texas and entire forests are missing because it's been bulldozed to make grazing ground for cattle, which seems insane. Why can't you leave some trees, you know? Well, the answer is the more trees are, the less grass grows, and so the cattle ranchers don't want any trees, even though the trees provide shade for the cows and help protect the moisture in the soil and so on. But a lot of places in Texas are just bulldozed down to the level of no more than 1 tree per acre. In fact, I've even heard that as a rule of thumb in Texas, that when you clear the land, leave 1 tree per acre. That's insane. There should be thousands of trees in that acre. But that's just one example. The collapse of the biosphere is here. Soil erosion is going to collapse the human food supply. The overuse of fossil water systems, such as the Ogallala water aquifer underneath Oklahoma and Kansas and parts of and so on, it provides much of the water, the breadbasket of the United States, the food production system. That water is going to be gone within, another generation. You've got the collapse of diversity of plants and the rise of monoculture, mechanized agriculture to grow GMO corn, for example, when those fields used to have 5,000 different species of plants and weeds and herbs and different soil microbes and strong diversity. And then you've got just piles and piles of trash everywhere. Human plastic. The point is that humans really are destroying this planet. Humans are causing a mass extinction event. Now, where I disagree with the globalists and the fake scientists is they claim that carbon dioxide is causing all this. They say it's global warming or climate change. They're just trying to use that because they can't explain all these other things, like the heavy metals contamination and the pesticides in the food supply, the soil erosion, the loss of fossil water, the collapse of pollinators, and so on. Those concepts are too complex for the general population to be able to process, so they just make up something new and they say, it's just carbon dioxide's bad. That's a lie, but they're using it to try to claim that humanity has to be seriously depopulated. And that's why you have all these left-wing people coming out and saying that the only answer is to drastically reduce human population, they say. Even some of them are just saying no one should have children anymore, that it's bad to have kids. And then you see these attacks on fertility and the rise of transgenderism, which is also about trying to blur the lines between male and female, because the entire sustainability of the human species is based on binary sex, a mother and a father, production to make new organisms, new babies, and that requires a mother and a father. And even that line is being blurred as another way to cause widespread infertility. And then, of course, you've got vaccines, which are frequently laced with infertility drugs. This has been part of the soft kill method, or you could call it maybe soft population reduction. If you have higher infertility rates, you have lower natural numbers of births. So you've seen a lot of vaccines being pushed in African nations, especially Nigeria, which is set to explode to eventually the world's 3rd most populous nation, following China and India, if current trends continue. A lot of people don't know that, but population explosions are happening in Africa. So getting into the minds of the globalists here, what they are saying and what they're observing is that they think the planet can't survive much of this much longer. And they needed to find a way to eliminate much of the human population without having another, Third Reich Holocaust. So they tried infertility drugs in the vaccines. They've tried mass pesticide poisoning. They've tried chemtrailing. Actually, they're still working on that. They're going to alter the atmosphere and block the sun and cause a global food collapse. That's an ongoing project, actually funded by Bill Gates, come to think of it. It's called Project ScopeX. And I've written about that extensively. It involves even Harvard scientists who are running that, and they say that the answer is to block some percentage of the sun, bounce sunlight away from the planet so that plants don't have the energy to engage in photosynthesis. You'll have a global collapse of rainforests and the food supply. and the planet will get cooler, as if there were a giant volcano that ejected billions of tons of particulate matter into the atmosphere. Yeah, the planet gets cooler for a couple of years because you're blocking the sunlight. Well, that's what they're going to do, artificially. And this is part of their plan as well. But all of these are going to take quite a lot of time, you see. Even the chemtrail geoengineering, or what I call terraforming experiment, that's going to take decades. And I believe that a lot of these globalists have come to meaning that if humanity continues along at its current pace and its current actions, that humanity will destroy the planet and destroy itself, a giant suicide race, at the same time. And that even the globalists would find themselves living in a totally collapsed society, which they don't want. They want a lot fewer people, but charge over a global utopia, whatever they imagine, that's where all the labor is run by robots and they've got automated systems and a few people still remaining who own all the land and have all the assets and run the robots and run the corporations. The Jeff Bezos people of the world. That's what they envision. And yeah, they'll keep enough humans around to program the robots and repair the robots and build the robots. Kind of like Matt Damon in that movie. What was it, Elysium? Pretty interesting vision of the future. You have the global elite in their orbiting space station, and then Earth is just in a total state of collapse, but that's where the manufacturing takes place and basically the slave labor factories. Well, except in the real future that the globalists have planned, they don't need humans. It's a post-human future planning. So what's the easiest way for them to carry that out? Release a bioengineered weapon system. Release a pandemic that is specifically engineered to kill only one species on the planet. Isn't that interesting? It doesn't kill gorillas, doesn't kill dolphins or even armadillos. It kills just one creature on Earth, Homo sapiens. The one that the globalists believe is destroying the planet and causing mass extinction. So this weapon is designed to not just cause an initial wave of destruction, but to then keep coming back year after year, wiping out more and more of humanity with each subsequent mutation. We have Dr. Redfield, the head of the CDC, now admitting this is going to come back every year. Kind of like the seasonal flu. There'll be a new strain year after year. He said that he already expects community outbreaks and the return of this even beyond this year. The CDC knows where this is headed because I think the CDC knows this is an engineered bioweapon. The globalists most certainly know it, and most importantly, when they developed this weapon, they co-developed the vaccine in parallel. And this is why the Purebright Institute, for example, has intellectual property of both the vaccine and the virus itself. Pretty clever, isn't it? If you're building a weapon to wipe out humanity, make sure that you and your buddies in the global elite halls of the world, that you have the antidote, i.e. a clean vaccine to fail. And that's what they have. So they've got the vaccine and they've got the weapon. And then all they had to do was pay somebody, some China spy or somebody, to take these materials, steal them from a lab in Canada, bring them to the virology lab in Wuhan, China, and then deliberately release it onto the streets. And even the person who did it may not have known what he was releasing. Probably was told this is some kind of a low-grade influenza experiment involving some, mutation of some common harmless flu strain or something. They probably had no clue what they're doing. And you know the rest of the story, so now from there it spreads and it mutates and it goes from country to country, now over 28 nations and territories, and it infects cruise ships and it infects airplanes and eventually gets to every major city around the world. And as that happens, the consequences fulfill every goal of the globalists. You have depopulation, and then you have the invocation of medical martial law requiring everybody to get vaccinated with your new vaccine. That's the public version of the vaccine. It's probably laced with some live viruses to make sure that the pandemic accelerates. Yes, you'll have an economic collapse, but you can blame the virus for it instead of blaming your own failed central bank policies. You can hide that fact if you have a big enough pandemic that crushes every economy on a global scale. And now think about this. In China, as this pandemic is breaking out across the cities, factories are shut down. And one of the ways that everybody knows that is we're monitoring Chinese cities via satellite, and guess what? The pollution levels have plummeted, proving the point of the globalists who say, wow, if we can release enough pandemics, the air gets cleaner. So you now have, quite literally, globalists watching the Earth from orbiting satellites and seeing direct, immediate evidence that the air is getting cleaner, the water is getting cleaner, the planet may be starting to heal because they were willing to release a pandemic that's going to spread around the world and kill the people that are running the factories, especially in China, polluting the oceans, polluting the rivers, polluting the soils, emitting toxic polluted air that circulates around the entire world. You see, the globalists have it figured out. This is the vector that they think is necessary to save the planet, and they, the globalists, believe that they're going to have to sacrifice some humans to save the planet for the protected elite who will inherit the earth. Now, I don't agree with what they're doing, I don't agree with their tactics, but I'm trying to help you understand the way they're thinking and how they justify this to themselves and what they're willing to do and how many people that they are willing to kill, because it's a lot of people.